Welcome everyone to our AP automation webinar. I'm excited to have you here today and talk about a topic that's actually pretty near and dear to my heart. So a few quick notes before we begin. Today's webinar will be recorded and we'll send you a link to the recording via email within about a day after the presentation. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please use the questions window and I will address them at the end as time allows. Any questions we don't get to, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the webinar. And lastly, your feedback does matter to us. We want these webinars to be as beneficial to you as possible. So please do take a moment to fill out the survey that you'll receive at the end of the webinar. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Allison Miller. I'm a sales engineer here for IDS. After about a decade of working in the telecom industry, I entered the world of RVs as a controller and worked as a general manager of a multi-location dealership before joining IDS back in 2022. My role now as a sales engineer is to be the technical contact on the sales team and really help bridge the gap between product and dealership operations in order to help provide our customers with the best solutions to run their business. What we're going to cover today is kind of two different payables related things. I'm going to go give a brief overview of IDS and who we are, just for any newcomers who might be on the call. And then I'm going to talk about an existing feature that we have within the system. One of the things that I like to do is make sure that our customers are leveraging all that IDS has to offer. And then I'm also going to give an overview of our new AP automation solution. That's a full automation suite. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have time for questions as well. Most of you on the call have heard of IDS, have been a customer sometimes for 20 plus years. For any new prospects who might be on the call, you know, we've been around for a long time in the RV and marine industry. That is our specialty. And we pride ourselves on providing a fully integrated DMS so that you can run all of the departments of your business within our system. And also really bringing in operational knowledge into the team here at IDS. So you'll notice as you get to know us that we have quite a few employees that come from dealerships like myself, either from RV, also from auto as well. So we try to bring that real world knowledge and in everything that we do, whether it's sales or product or support, to support our customers. So the first thing I want to talk about is the automatic parts payable creation. I keep trying to come up with a clever way to say this succinctly, and I haven't gotten there yet. So if anybody has any ideas and you want to throw them in the questions box, I would accept that. But what this is we've actually enhanced an existing feature that's been in G2, was in G2 or IDS for a long time. And it allowed you to create a payable that ought to have the system automatically create a payable when a purchase order was fully received. Well, we identified that doesn't necessarily meet everyone's needs, because typically if we receive some parts on a purchase order, the vendor is going to invoice us for the parts that we've received. So we made several modifications to this existing configuration to make this more usable for our dealers, for our customers. So what we did is the system now has a new config, and I'll get into the details so that you guys can take note of that. And that will now automatically generate a payable for parts upon receipt, whether it's partial receipt or fully received. And then we added, additionally, we added on top of that we capture the vendor invoice number and freight expense at the time that purchase order is saved. So you can see a screenshot here of an example where we've got a purchase order. I received one of the items. In that same post-save options box that parts has always received, we added a section to capture the vendor invoice and the freight. And there's even a pop-up message that'll pop up if they don't put a vendor invoice. It'll say, hey, are you sure you want to submit this without a vendor invoice? Now, sometimes we don't necessarily have a copy of the invoice number when we receive the parts, so the system does allow them to submit it without that, but we'll remind them in the event that they just forgot. We also made several enhancements to the purchase order itself in order to accommodate this new functionality. So within the existing receiving history tab, we've added additional columns of data to capture the vendor invoice number and the payable number. So now when you look at your receiving history, you can see exactly which payable. So the payable is going to be the internal IDS payable number. And then the vendor invoice, of course, is going to be your supplier's invoice number. So you can look at your receiving history and see exactly what payable each line item went to. We also added to the right of the receiving history all parts. You can see there's a receiving history per part. And so that allows you to see the full receiving history. Say you order 100 of something and you receive 10 and then 20 and then 50. It'll actually show the full receiving history for that part. And again, every payable associated with it. So now from the accounting side, from the accounts payable manager, we can view all payables by PO. We've always had that ability. But now on the PO side, we have better visibility. So the parts department can go back and see if they have a mismatch or they need to reconcile something. They have better visibility into that. For those existing customers that want to take advantage of this, you will need to be on the latest Astra release. So make sure you're on the latest release in order to have access to this. This was actually included in our fall release. And it's as easy as updating your module configs. So there's 2 module configs here. The first one is the existing config that we enhanced and added the partially received option. So you want to make sure parts config 51 is equal to PR for partially received. And then we added a new config, parts config number 93, and that's where you're going to specify what expense account you want that freight cost to go to. So that one is going to be specific to your dealership and whatever your freight expense account is. You can enable this on a per location basis. So if you wanted to start with one location and see how it goes and then add other locations, you can certainly do that. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. So now I'd like to get into the full AP automation suite. So this is an additional product that we've actually partnered with an outside company called Formed AI. Formed AI has been in business for over 16 years and has been involved in a very large number of integrations. They have integrations with companies like ADP, Microsoft, FedEx, and really doing these specialized custom implementations is kind of their specialty. And they have created a custom implementation for IDS. And so they've been a really strong partner of ours and have helped us build this, this partnership between G2 IDS and their AP automation solution. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean by AP automation. Really, we're talking about automating kind of all the routine steps of the AP process. So everything from receiving the invoices, coding them to the appropriate GL account, outing for approval, posting them back into IDS. And then there's also a payment piece as well. To get a little bit more into detail as far as what this system can do, it captures invoices digitally, including handwritten invoices. What this means, in short, is you basically scan your invoices and email them. There'll be a specific email address set up for you as a dealership, for each dealership. And you email your invoices into the system, and then it begins processing them. That also applies for a lot of vendors now just email their invoices to you directly. So you can actually set up an auto forward where you just say redirect these and they'll go into your AP automation solution. So really, it's meant to be set up so it's just as easy as possible to get those invoices into the system with very little effort. And then the system matches invoices to BOs to reconcile them. So it actually brings in, part of the integration is to bring in all the PO detail, the purchase order details, so that as the invoices are being scanned in and processed, they can be reconciled against the purchase order. It attaches proper GL codes, so there's definitely some machine learning that's involved in this. And the more you use the system and the more you tell it how things should be coded, it'll remember based on the vendor and the line items, how to code it in the future. And it posts to GL schedules. This was something that I raised my hand early on and said, I just want to make sure that it can handle the GL schedules as well, because that's such an important part of the accounting within the system. So happy to report that yes, it does. So not only will it post the invoice back to the system and apply the proper GL code, it'll also apply the proper GL schedules. And then the workflow also looks up payment terms and discounts. This is key because this is one of the ways that the system can help provide some operational cost savings, is by making sure that you're managing all of those discount opportunities. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. AP automation also includes approval workflows. So you can work with us to create custom workflow approval workflows for this can be multi-level approvals. So let's say you want for a certain dollar threshold, you want it to go to the parts manager, and then above that, you want it to go to the general manager. You can set up those workflows, and then those users will be able to come and see the related payable and approve it or disapprove it. We can manage invoices for multiple locations all in one workflow. So this is a great solution for centralizing these processes. And then we also have an optional process to issue payment. And we can do multiple payment types, ACH, check, but also virtual credit card. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and why that's important. Now, I do want to note on the payment piece, the payments piece is not yet available for our Canadian customers. So sorry, guys, for now, the payable piece is still, the two can be separated. So we kind of talk about the actual invoices and the payables separate from the payments, because you can do both, or you can do just the invoice side. And then there's also some metrics and dashboards and reports that I'll show you some samples of as well, so that you can monitor this process. Oops, skipped a slide. There we go. So what that looks like visually when we talk about AP automation is this entire data chain from uploading the documents to reporting on the back end, to be able to see what step in the approval you're in, where your money's being spent, lots of reporting, and then everything in between, including this bidirectional sync with IDS of this data going back and forth. I want to take a minute to go into detail about the data extraction piece, because this is where Formed AI kind of stands out above the rest, and this was one of the reasons why we chose to partner with them. They use an OCR, ICR technology, which is a pretty well-known common technology, but it is generally only about 86% accurate. So this is basically that scanning an image and converting it to text, right? That technology's been around for quite a while. But then what they do is they actually include human verification. So they do randomized text verification. So they have staff that actually will review transactions and verify their accuracy, but they don't do it at the transactional level. They do these little kind of micro snippets of data where they confirm that that data is accurate or correct. That way it still maintains your confidentiality, and no one person has full visibility of your information. They're just seeing bits of information and confirming, yes, that's accurate. This combination of their extraction software plus the human verification allows Formed AI to provide a 99% accuracy rate of the data scanning of these invoices. And this includes handwritten invoices that you might receive from a sublet vendor, for example. That final 1% that requires supervision, that's going to require, someone in your organization to put eyes on it and figure out what's wrong. Oftentimes what we see there is that the invoice was scanned in upside down, right? Or it's something where it's just really illegible and it's not able to be, the data is not able to be accurately extracted. So just an image view, kind of what that looks like. This is just a sample where you've got the payable on one side and the data extraction on the other side, where the system's going through and pulling all of the text and all of the numbers from the payable and populating this detailed invoice within the system. Now, I do want to mention, before I dive into real-time reporting, the processing and the reporting all happens within a separate website. So on the IDS side, the payables are eventually posted back to G2 once they've all gone through their approval workflow. But we're leveraging a website called Pyrus. And so there's a few different terms going around here, right? We've got AP automation is the solution. Formed AI is our partner in that. And the website that manages all these tasks and payables and includes all of this reporting is called Pyrus. So what you're looking at here is a screenshot from that website of an example of their real-time reporting. They have this dashboard view where you can see all of your payables that are in the system and what step they're in of the process. It's a multi-step process to go through and look up the PO and confirm the values. And then if it gets stuck on any one particular step, then it'll notify a user, hey, you need to go in and verify XYZ. There's also a lifetime audit trail. So from the time you start using the system, it's going to capture all of the images of all the invoices that you've sent in, but also all of this detailed data that it's extracting from the images, and it creates this register. And so this register is an Excel-like table where you can sort and filter, and you can even create saved views. So if you wanted to create a register of just NTP, for example, I could filter this, hit the star in the right-hand corner, and then that would create my own little saved register of all of my NTP transactions. In addition to capturing the invoice itself, we also have the ability to capture supplementary input, like supporting documentation, like packing slips, for example. And so we can also attach those kinds of documentation as well, and that'll all get captured and securely stored within the system. On the G2 side, this is an example of a payable that was posted back to G2 from the AP automation. And you'll notice the arrow pointing towards there's a new icon when you enable AP automation to view Smart Systems documents. This is going to give you two options. When you open that window, you can view the invoice. So it actually is storing a copy of the invoice within G2 as well. Or there's a link you can click that'll take you to the Pyrus website. That'll take you to something like this. Where you can actually view the invoice image as well as the extracted detail. So you can view these as a side-by-side right within Pyrus, or you can open just the invoice within G2. And then also here I can see the full workflow of where this invoice, of what this invoice has gone through and all of the validations it's gone through, both from an automated side and from a human side. So, one of the things I'm going to ask you towards the end is to think about how much it's costing you to process a single invoice. And And so these are some of the things, I'm not going to go through every single one, but these are some of the things that, you know, as you're processing an invoice, generally these are going to be labor. These are like all labor costs, right? Except for maybe the printing of an emailed invoice, you're using up some paper there. But a lot of time spent on all of these things, especially things like filing and approvals. And this slide has a lot going on, but also we'll share the deck out afterwards. But there's also some additional efficiencies that we can gain in addition to, you know, automating some of those steps from the prior slide. We can also help avoid late fees, take advantage of discounts, right? Improve accuracy. So there's a lot of things that when we really get into the nitty gritty and we start looking at accounts payables, there's oftentimes a lot of room for improvement, and there's a lot of bottlenecks that we can help clear up through automation. So as we go through this process, generally when I'm meeting with customers and having a conversation about this, these are some of the things that we like to stop and think about, right? So how many people do you have, full-time employees, do you have processing payables right now? And how could their time be better spent if not entering payables? You know, and then I think it's important too, as part of this process, to reflect on, it can be difficult to quantify it, but to reflect on, you know, how much do you think it costs to process a single payable? You know, and the biggest chunk of that on the payable side is going to be the time, right? On average, how much time does your employee spend opening the email, printing it, posting it, making sure that they have the approvals, right? All of that. And then on the other side, because we're going to talk about the payments piece too, is how much does it cost to issue a payment? Now here we have a lot more hard costs, right? You've got the actual physical check, the envelope, postage. If it's ACH, then there's bank fees. And then what percentage of bills are currently paid with credit card, and are you taking advantage of rebates? So that's one of the things that we leverage with AP automation is part of the implementation process is actually to work with all of your vendors and identify which vendors are willing to accept ACH payments, because that will bring your transactional costs down, no longer having to print checks. But most importantly, which vendors are willing to accept credit cards? Because with the credit cards, there's a rebate program in place that oftentimes can offset a large portion of the transactional cost to move to AP automation. So just as a reference guide, I've provided some industry data around the cost of processing a single invoice. This isn't the payment side. This is just the entering the invoice into the system. So you can see here, it's a wide range, anywhere from $4 on the low end, best in class. So that's like, you know, it takes your person 15 minutes to pull the papers, seek approvals, you know, confirm GL coding and post it, right? It can be as simple as that, but it's a pretty well-oiled machine all the way up to, in some cases, over $20 an hour or $20 per invoice, just depending on the efficiency of the operations and your processes and workflows. And then the other element here is that early payment discount capture rate as well. So at the end of the day, you know, I've kind of summarized it down to some of the top reasons of why automate this process. And initially, when we started looking at this product, the first thing that came to mind is, well, you can reduce headcount. But what we quickly realized is that that isn't always really applicable or desirable. In fact, a lot of dealerships, and I know this was certainly the case with my dealership, have a hard time finding and retaining staff. So yeah, no, I'm not necessarily going to reduce headcount. Now, some places might be able to, but a lot of times that's not really the ultimate goal. But instead, looking at how can you better utilize your staff, right? So now you've got this person and you take away hours of data entry. Now they can focus on process improvement, reconciliations, other more high value items. In addition to that, with AP automation, it gives you a way to grow your business without having to add headcount. So maybe you want to keep everybody you've got a great staff, you can better utilize them, but now you can increase your volume rather significantly without having to increase your staffing level at an incremental rate. This also is a way to improve accuracy, especially if you have multiple people. If you have a situation where you have multiple people posting payables, it's easy to run into a situation where you have inconsistencies because one person posts it to one account, another posts it to another account. By leveraging technology and machine learning, you're going to get consistency. And so, I think overall, it's going to result in an improvement of accuracy on the accounting side. And then reducing operational costs through a combination of things, right? Better utilizing your staff, taking advantage of rebates on the credit card payments with vendors, and then lastly, ease of audit and on-site storage reductions. I kind of put those together as a single bullet point because even though they're two different things, oftentimes when you have an audit, you had to go to the file room and dig through boxes and boxes of files. And so there's potentially a cost reduction associated with all that on-site storage, now moving that storage to the cloud. And now you've just got records that are much more easily accessible and can be pulled in electronic form in the event that you need them for an audit. So we do have a few questions that I wanted to go into. Let's see, can you see the freight after receiving? Okay, thank you, Ellen, for your question. Can you see the freight after receiving? Okay, so this goes back to our payable creation. And I'm not sure I understand the question. So if you want to send a clarification, and I'm going to move on to the next question. How does it match the invoice to the PO automatically by invoice number? Okay, great question. So there are actually tables, including the PO table that is brought in. So it's by PO number. There's tables of data that are brought into the Pyrus software platform. And I can actually kind of show you guys a preview of what I'm talking about here. So this is the Pyrus website. I've got an example up here of an invoice that I'm looking at where I've scanned an invoice in, and I can see the data extraction on the side. There is also, let's see here. If I go to forms, that's my AP form here. And then I've got my dashboard. So this dashboard is much more complete than the screenshot that I showed. So we have lots of metrics on the dashboard. And then here we go. So the catalogs, so these are the different items that are actually imported into the system. So there's this two-way sync happening regularly. And it includes things like location data, the chart of accounts, PO data, the GL transaction receipts, receiving history, user IDs, and then your vendor file. So these are constantly being synced so that the system can utilize them to match the payable, for example, to the receiving report. So it's going to look for that. It's going to look for that PO number, and it's going to find the related receiving report for that PO number, and then confirm that the dollar values and amounts match. The next question is about an ETA on payments for Canada. So I do not have an ETA at this time. If anybody from IDS does have an ETA who's on the call and wants to jump in with one, then I'll circle back on that at the end. Otherwise, we'll follow up. We'll follow up afterwards on that one. Next question here is, the vendor of the PO and the receiving report is where the AP invoice will be posted. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. So it is pulling from the vendor on the PO to correlate it. And that's how from that PO receiving report that is catalog, that PO receiving data that it's importing into the system, that's what it's using. And then follow-up question, can you change the vendor at any time? That one I'll have to follow up on with you directly, Lisa, and kind of see what the use case is there, and then I can get a more specific answer for you. Oh, and then, okay, so Ellen clarified on the freight, on the receiving report, don't see it on the receiving report, can you see the freight after you receive? So I take that to mean within the purchase order itself. And that is a good question that I don't know off the top of my head. So I will follow up on that afterwards as well. Great questions, you guys. I should have advanced the slide sooner. Because I do want to talk about kind of what this process looks like. So we do run a cost benefit analysis for any dealer who's interested in this. We look at the transactional cost of running AP automation, and then we actually will use your dealership's volume data on number of invoices processed and payments processed in order to create a custom cost benefit analysis for you, so that you can look at it in addition to all of the organizational efficiencies that can be gained, so that you can also evaluate it from more of a hard cost standpoint. So if you're interested in seeing that cost benefit analysis, or if you want to have a more in-depth Q&A, reach out to your account manager. We've got Wiley in the Eastern US and Texas, Kevin, Western US and Canada, and then Britt on new business side, for those of you who are not yet an IDS customer. So reach out to them, and we'll be able to put that cost benefit analysis for you, so that we can go a little bit deeper in this conversation around cost and operational savings. Before I let you go, I do want to invite you to join our future webinars. I try to have every webinar be helpful in including ways to leverage the system you have, but also introduce you to new products that we're bringing to market. That's always my goal, is to have there be that balance, so that there's something for everyone. Now, for our next webinar on April 17th, that is just going to be for existing IDS customers, because it's going to be a review of our release notes. And so that one's going to be on Wednesday, April 17th, and I'll be going through highlights from the release of things. We tend to put a lot out in our releases, and so what I want to do is I want to pare it down, and I want to highlight the things that I think are really important and want to make sure our dealers are aware of and are taking advantage of. Similar to the improved parts receipt to payable feature, I want to make sure that as those things come out, you guys know about them. And then in May, we'll be talking about paperless service department, specifically service CRM, parts request online, and e-sign. And then in June, we're going to spend some time and do a little bit of a deep dive into Engage, which is our email marketing platform. That's included as part of your sales CRM purchase. And so again, making sure that our customers know what they have available to them and how to best leverage it to get the most out of their investment in IDS. We understand that it's an investment, and we want to make sure that you're getting as much value out of it as possible. So I'll go back to this slide just in case anybody needs their contact information. You can also always reach out to sales@ids-astra.com if you're not sure who to reach out to exactly. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today, and also for those of you who submitted questions. As a reminder, you will receive an emailed copy of this webinar within about the next day. And please do complete that survey as you leave the webinar, so that I can continue to make sure that these webinars are creating value for all of you. All right, thank you so much. and I look forward to seeing you all next time.